Good morning, everyone. I guess it's good afternoon now. My name is Zach Dillinger. I work in the communications area at the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, or DIFS as we do call ourselves. Now with me today as moderator, I have Ian Oberg, my counterpart in the communications area. We also have auto insurance analyst Parker Fisher. Now Parker will be answering your questions a little bit later on. Now, speaking of questions, if you do find the speech bubble with a question mark, should be on your screen, probably in the upper right corner. You'll be able to click that and type in your questions. Now, we are here today to talk about this new auto insurance law that took effect in Michigan last year. Now, this law made changes for auto insurance policies that are issued or renewed after July 1st of 2020. Now, you may already have a policy under this new law, and some drivers may still have policies under the old law. They haven't renewed or gotten a new one yet. Now, today we will dive a little deeper into these changes to auto insurance and try to help you understand what changes this law did make and what you'll have to do the next time you buy or renew a policy. Now, we do know that the changes can seem big, but we are here to help you understand them. And we'll also provide you with resources, including our website, our videos, and our publications as well. And you'll also be able to watch the presentation again later on our website. We have previously recorded it, so you can watch it there as well. So with that, let's get started. Now first, a little background about DIFS. We are fee funded and do not require your tax dollars to operate. We regulate Michigan's insurance and financial industries. Now that includes insurance agents, insurance companies, mortgage companies, deferred presentment companies, or payday lenders as they're sometimes called, as well as state chartered banks and credit unions. Now, in all that we do, our guiding principle is that we are regulators, and that means we work for you as a consumer protection agency. Now, in our day-to-day work, we work to foster economic opportunity for Michigan consumers. We work to provide fair access to institutions that are safe, sound, and entitled to public confidence. And we also, as we are doing this afternoon, we provide financial and insurance education to help people understand their options. So now that you know a little more about who we are, let's move on to these changes to auto insurance. Now, to understand the changes to the law, you need to know that the basic Michigan auto insurance policy that you must buy to drive legally has three mandatory parts. Now, those parts are sometimes called coverages, and they are property protection insurance, or PPI. We also have personal injury protection medical coverage. We call that PIP. And we have residual liability, bodily injury, and property damage. Now, that is quite a mouthful, so we do call that BIPD for short. Now, today we're only going to be speaking about how this new law affects the last two coverages. So PIP and BIPD, those are the orders for the day. Now on the screen here, you should see the big picture key changes that this new no-fault law made to the way auto insurance works in Michigan. So for number one, the new law provides drivers for the first time with a choice on the level of medical coverage that they want to buy. It lowers costs while maintaining the highest benefits in the nation, and it increases consumer protections. Now, I'm going to detail each of these three bullet points in turn, but as I said in the opening, most of these changes take effect for policies issued or renewed after July 1st of 2020. So let's start with PIP medical coverage. Now, remember, that's one of those mandatory three I talked about. Now, PIP pays for medical care, recovery, and rehabilitation if policyholders are in an auto accident. Now, under the old law, everybody had to have unlimited PIP medical coverage. You didn't have a choice. If you were going to drive legally, you had to have that. But now you're going to get to choose, or you may already have chosen, a level of PIP that's right for you. Now, these new available limits equal or exceed the highest benefits in the country. And Michigan is the only state where unlimited PIP medical continues to be an option. So there are 6 options that you can choose from depending on your circumstances. And those levels are unlimited coverage per person per accident. So again, it's what you had under the old law, and you can still choose that if you want to. Now there's an up to 500,000 in coverage per person per accident. That's option 2. Now options 3 and 4 both say 250, and they're a little slightly different, so I'll explain that now. The option 3 is 250,000 in coverage per person per accident, straight $250,000 limit. Now option 4 is 250,000 in coverage, but allows you to exclude people in your household from PIP medical coverage. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. Now option 5 is up to 50,000 in coverage per person per accident, and that's available if the named insured is enrolled in Medicaid, and all the other household members are either also enrolled in Medicaid, have qualified health coverage, or another Michigan auto policy which provides that PIP coverage. Now option 6 is a medical PIP opt out. Now that opt out may be available if you have Medicare Parts A and B, and all other members of your household have qualifying health coverage, or again, another Michigan auto policy. Now, it is important that you know that if you don't make a choice, you'll default to receiving unlimited PIP medical coverage, what you have under the old law, and you'll pay the premium associated with that option. Now, earlier I said that this new law would lower costs while maintaining benefits. What you see here on the screen is one of the most important ways of doing just that. Now, each insurance company will be required to reduce statewide average PIP medical premiums until at least 2028. That's 8 years from when the law took effect. Now, for the unlimited option, it is a required average 10% reduction. The $500,000 option, it's a 20% reduction. That $250,000 option, it's a 35% reduction. And for the $50,000 option, it's a 45% average reduction. Now, here are some additional ways that this new law reduces costs. For the first time in Michigan auto insurance, we'll have a fee schedule. Now, unlike health insurance or Medicare, auto insurance previously did not have limitations on what a healthcare provider could charge for their services after an accident. Now, this fee schedule is a required cost control measure between the auto insurance companies and the healthcare providers, and that will help make PIP medical more affordable for consumers. The law sets out a schedule of fees that can be charged by those providers for those medical services after an accident. And this provision takes effect after July 1st of 2021. So just in about 4 months, well, no, 5 months from now, this will take effect. Now, it's very important that you know that you're not going to lose care. It just means that those healthcare costs will be better controlled. Now, another new piece of the new law that will help reduce costs is called utilization review. Now, this means that the medical care provided to auto accident victims must be reviewed by the auto insurer to make sure it is medically appropriate. Now, healthcare providers can request that DIFS review the case if they disagree with that decision. Now, this is another thing like the fee schedule that doesn't directly impact you or the care you receive, but you may at some point receive a notice that an appeal has been submitted to DIFS by your healthcare provider. Now, you won't have to do anything or anything like that, but if you do have questions about it, you can always contact us here at DIFS. Now, the last bullet point there is the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association, or the MCCA, and the assessment that they charge. Now, I am sure you've read about the MCCA in the newspaper or seen it on the TV, but it is an association of auto insurers. It's required by the state law, and that reimburses member companies for PIP medical costs which exceed an identified amount after a catastrophic injury. Now, the MCCA last year announced that it was lowering its per vehicle assessment, and that saved Michigan drivers at least $120 per car. Now, since then, they've also announced that the assessment will be further lowered starting July 1st of this year, and this will save drivers even more. Now, if you do choose less than the unlimited PIP medical coverage, that option 1, something other than that, you will not pay the assessment to the MCCA going forward. Now, I did mention consumer protections, and one of the most important parts of this new law is that it does increase consumer protections in the insurance market and helps us here at DIFS make sure the market is fair. Now, it does that in a number of ways, starting with that it eliminates certain non-driving factors from the rating process. So the rating process is how the insurance company decides how much your coverage should cost given your situation and the choices you make. Now, the new law does prohibit auto insurance companies from using certain factors when they do that process. And those factors are your sex, your marital status, your home ownership status, your credit score, your educational level, your occupation, and your zip code. Those are the things they can no longer use when they set your rates. Now, it also eliminates penalties for those who have gone without insurance. Now, previously, auto insurance companies could charge a penalty to people who had gone without auto insurance for a period of time. Under this new law, insurers cannot limit coverage, charge a reinstatement fee, or increase the premium for an eligible driver solely due to a lapse in coverage if the driver applies for insurance before the amnesty period ends, and that does end January 1st, 2022. So if you are uninsured, this is a great time to make sure that you're going to get coverage. Now, the new law also created the Fraud Investigation Unit, which is a unit within DIFS which investigates criminal and fraudulent activity related to insurance and financial markets. Now, those folks do work with the Attorney General and law enforcement to prosecute those crimes. Now, this is really an important double benefit for us. Not only is it an important consumer protection, but it's also cost savings because auto insurance fraud drives up premiums for all of us. Now, bullet 4, the new law requires prior approval. So auto insurance rates, policies, manuals, forms, all of those things must now be filed with and approved by us here at DIFS prior to being offered for sale to consumers. Now, number 5 is that it does increase fines and penalties. The new law allows for increased fines on insurance companies, agencies, and licensed agents for certain violations of the law. Now, as I did say before, you will need to choose a PIP medical coverage level based on your needs and your budget. Now, your auto insurance company or your agent will give you a form that describes the benefits and risks of your coverage options. Now, you may want to talk with an auto insurance agent or company to discuss your personal auto insurance needs before you fill out that form to make your choice. Now, when you do fill that form out, you might need to bring some information with you. And that could include information from your health insurer or your employer, which identifies individuals covered under your health insurance. You might need a statement as to whether your health policy is qualified health coverage or QHC. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, also, if you're a Medicare or Medicaid participant and you're going to seek that option 5 $50,000 Medicaid option or option 6, the Medicare Opt Out, you will need to bring proof of enrollment with you that says that you are part of that program. Now, just a second ago, I mentioned qualified health coverage. I'd like to tell you now what that means. Now, generally speaking, qualified health coverage is coverage that will ensure that auto accident injuries will be covered. So having qualified health coverage means that you either have Medicare Parts A and B. Now, this could also be a Medicare Advantage Plan Part C because that encompasses A and B. But you need A and B or a health insurance policy that does not limit or exclude auto accident injuries, and it must have a deductible of less than $6,000. Now, please note that VA health benefits do not count as qualified health coverage. So if you are VA, that does not count. Now, you'll need to submit proof of having qualified health coverage to your insurer when you apply for or renew a policy with a PIP option that requires you to have that QHC. But you shouldn't need it just to get a quote. Now, your health insurer should provide you with a document that tells you if your policy is considered QHC. Now, you may have to contact your employer's benefit office or insurance company to get this documentation before you can make that certification to your auto insurance company that you do have that qualified health coverage. Now, if you believe that you have qualified health coverage, but you cannot get a letter or proof of it from your health insurer or your employer, you can contact us here at DIFS Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. At 833-ASK-DIFS, and we can help you get that. Now, it is important to note that if you later lose this qualified health coverage that you're saying that you have, you must notify your auto insurer and obtain qualified health coverage or PIP medical coverage within 30 days. Now, after 30 days, if you have not obtained that QHC or a PIP medical coverage policy, you will not be entitled to any PIP medical benefits in the event of an auto accident. Please consider this carefully and discuss with your auto insurer if you do have questions. Very, very important decision. Now, in order to make this PIP selection under the new law, you will need to complete a PIP medical coverage form. Now, this form should also be completed when you renew your auto insurance policy, if you are making a change to your coverage, or if you previously opted out, excluded someone from your household from PIP medical coverage, or if you've selected the $50,000 PIP medical option. Now, some insurers may require you to complete the PIP form more often, and you should contact your insurer or agent to learn more if that concerns you. Now, here's a sample of what this PIP form that your company or your agent is going to give you, what it might look like. Now, it may look a little different from what you see here on the screen, but it will still contain all the terms and information that you need to make this choice. Now, it is a 4-page form, but you only have a couple of small parts to fill out, and all the information you need to do that is on the form itself. Now, on this screen here, you see the first page of the form, which has some definitions of some words that will be used throughout, and some other important information that I strongly encourage you to read. Now, this sample form has been posted to our website, which is michigan.gov/autoinsurance. If you write down nothing else today, I surely hope it is that web address. Again, michigan.gov/autoinsurance. Now, let's take a closer look at the rest of this form and what you'll need to do when you make this PIP selection. Pages 2 and 3 of the form will have Section A. Now, in Section A, you'll find the risks and benefits of those options that you have. Now, this means it lists out those choices we talked about earlier and tells you in plain language what each choice would mean for you and the potential trade-offs you make when you choose that option. Next up is Section B. Now, Section B is where you'll actually make your choice by initialing the form next to one, and please do make sure it is only one of those options which are available to you. Now, also, if you do choose that $250,000 with exclusions option, this is where you would list the names and birthdays of the persons in your household that you are excluding from your PIP medical coverage. You only need to include the names and birthdays of the people you intend to exclude from PIP medical, not everybody in the household, just those that you want to exclude. Also on that page, you'll find Section C. Now, Section C, you'll need to initial the form next to 4 statements, which confirm that you understand what you're choosing and how it applies to you. There on that page 4 also, you'll sign and date. Now, once you've given that form back to your agent or your company, you will have finished making your PIP choice. So as you can see, it is a fairly simple process, but it is a very, very important one. And you really do need to understand what you're choosing before you make your choice. So be sure you have carefully considered all of your options before you complete that form. Now, with that, that's what we finished with what we need to talk about with PIP. So let's move on to BIPD. Earlier, you heard me say that there are those 3 mandatory coverages to a Michigan auto insurance policy. This is the second and final one we're going to talk about today. Now, under this new law, another choice you're going to get to make is on your BI coverage. Now, BI, or bodily injury, is the portion of a no-fault policy that will pay up to certain amounts if the policyholder is found legally responsible for certain damages. It pays for those claims which are made by others against you. Now, under the old law, the minimum BI coverage level was $20,000 for a person who was hurt or killed in an accident, $40,000 for 2 or more persons in any one accident, and $10,000 for property damage in another state. So if you were to sideswipe a fence in Ohio or hit a mailbox in Indiana, something like that, that's where that $10,000 come in. Now, this new law allows drivers the ability to choose BI limits that best suit their family needs. It's interesting to note that the old $20,000 per person and $40,000 per accident limits had not been adjusted for inflation in something like 30 years. As we all know, things have gotten a little more expensive in the last 30 years. So drivers will now have the choice of purchasing minimum coverage of $50,000 per person or 100,000 per accident, and 100,000 per accident, or even higher, to protect themselves against the increased potential for lawsuits. Now, if you don't make a choice, the new default minimum is 250,000 per person per accident and 500,000 for 2 or more persons in any one accident. Now, you should consider consulting with legal and financial advisors to determine how to best protect your assets and income from this new scope of financial liability. Now, like with your PIP choice, your company or agent will give you a form to fill out when you make your BIPD choice. This is the approved form that you see here on the screen, and your company should use a form which is identical. Probably won't say sample on it, but other than that, it should be the same. Now, we've also posted this to our website as well, so you can download and read it before you do go to make that choice. Now, as with the PIP form, we do encourage you to make sure that you read and understand the form before you then fill out just a couple of small things on the form when you make that BIPD selection. Now, here I also want you to know that we have produced videos on how to fill out the BI and the PIP form. You can find those on our website as well. So again, michigan.gov/autoinsurance. So let's dig into this form a little bit. Part A explains BI coverage in detail. Part B explains the potential risks you face as a driver in Michigan and explains how BI coverage can help protect you. In Part C, you'll initial the form in 3 places, next to 3 statements that confirm that you understand the risks and benefits of the coverage that you're choosing. Finally, again, you'd simply sign and date the form. And once you've done that and given it back to your agent or your company, you will have completed your BIPD selection process. So to quickly recap what we've just talked about, when you go to renew or get a new policy, you'll have 2 forms to complete. The PIP form is where you'll pick the amount of medical coverage that you want to have for your family. You'll fill this out the first time you get a new policy, but you should only have to fill this form out again if you're making a change to your coverage or if you previously opted out, excluded someone in your household from PIP medical coverage, or selected that $50,000 PIP option. Now, this is done to ensure that you've not had a change in health insurance that could result in you no longer being eligible for that option. Now, some insurers, as I said before, may require you to complete the PIP form more often. The other form you'll get is the BI form, and that's where you pick how much your insurance company will pay on your behalf if you're at fault in an accident. Now, both of those forms that I've talked about will contain all the information you need to make your selection. We do encourage you to talk to an agent or your company. Now, with that, that does cover the big changes from the law that we need to talk about right now. Before we get on to your questions, I do want to take just a moment now to tell you more about how DIFS can help you. Other than our website, michigan.gov/autoinsurance, perhaps the most important thing I can tell you today is that we do want to hear from you. Now, we are not going to be able to answer your individual questions about your specific auto insurance policy here today, but we do have people in our office, not a computer asking you to press 1 for auto insurance or anything like that. Those folks are in the office Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. to help answer questions about insurance. And that can be auto insurance or health or life or any of that, or even general insurance questions. Now, that DIFS call center is housed within our Office of Consumer Services, which also handles all complaints that come into our office. Now, if you're concerned that your auto insurance company is perhaps unfairly delaying or denying a claim, maybe charging you the wrong premium, or otherwise, they're just not performing as they're required to under the law, we are here to help. Now, we do encourage you to first attempt to resolve that complaint directly with the agent or company, but if you cannot reach a resolution, you may file a complaint in writing with DIFS via email or through our website. Now, speaking of websites, we did create a new one to help educate consumers about this new law. I've said it a couple of times, I'll probably say it a couple more times, but the new website is michigan.gov/autoinsurance, and it has a lot of great information on it. I really do encourage you to check it out. We have information about tips for shopping for insurance. You can sign up to get information about auto insurance changes. You can file a complaint, and you can find out what the complaint process looks like. You can find out more information about what to do if you're having problems with your agent or your company or an agency. And very importantly, it does have a place that you can anonymously report insurance fraud. Now, this website's been updated many times in the last year, and it will continue to be updated to make sure it has the latest information for all Michigan drivers. So to reiterate, we do want to hear from you. We all work for you, and we are here to help you with these new changes. So again, the next time you renew or get a new policy, you get that PIP and BI form. Those forms will describe those benefits and risks, and you do want to consider consulting with an agent or your company to talk about your personal auto insurance needs. Now, you can always call or email our office if you have questions about the forms or anything else related to this new auto insurance law. Now, that phone number is 833-ASK-DIFS, and our auto insurance specific email is autoinsurance@michigan.gov. And again, you can get those forms and publications, videos, a lot of great information on that website. So I think we can now take the questions that we typed into the chat system. Please do feel free to ask any more questions as they come up. And again, if you click on that speech bubble with a question mark and click on it, you can type in your question. But please do remember that your questions should be about your specific policy, or should you choose that or whatever, should be saved for our office analysts. Now, with that, I'd like to introduce our question moderator, Ian Oberg. Ian.
Thank you very much, Zach. Our first question is, I am unhappy with how much I'm paying for car insurance. How should I try to get it lowered? Parker?
Right. So if you currently have an auto policy and you're looking to get a lower rate under the new law, first things first, you can always ask your agent. If you're currently, on the policy that you have now and you haven't renewed yet, you can call your agent. They can set you up with a new rate under the new law, and you can explore your options there together. And you can always shop around, go to different insurance companies. This is a really good time to do that, especially with the new law, because a lot of companies have lowered their rates. So we do encourage people to shop around to ensure they get the best rate if they're looking to lower their auto insurance costs.
Thank you very much, Parker. Next question. When is the deadline to get insured if you were previously uninsured? Parker?
Right. So the new law had the amnesty period. Zach touched on it a little bit earlier, but what this basically means, just to reiterate, is that before, in the old law or in the old system we had, your auto insurer, if you weren't able to get coverage or you were driving uninsured for a little bit, there was a penalty for getting new insurance. So if you didn't have insurance for whatever reason and you were trying to get insurance, your insurance company could charge you a fee, some sort of like reinstatement fee or any sort of extra charge for regaining coverage after not having it for a while. So to reiterate, the new law provided an amnesty period, so your company can't do that. But there is a window of time. So this period lasts until January 1st, 2022. So from now until then, if you weren't able to carry auto insurance on your car, we do encourage you to use this opportunity to get insured so you don't have to face any penalty for getting insured.
Thank you very much, Parker. Our next question is, I already completed the PIP form last year. Do I need to complete it again when I'm up for renewal?
So in terms of filling out the PIP form, this is very dependent on the coverage that you selected. So for options that require you to rely on any sort of health coverage, like the qualified health coverage or Medicare or Medicaid, it's important that the PIP forms are filled out each time. So this is just to confirm that you still have those coverages and you are still relying on those coverages to be able to select those PIP options. So that's the reason why that form is filled out every time. But for other options, you may not have to fill out the PIP form every single time. So if you buy a limited coverage option or the unlimited option, you may not have to fill out the form each time. And I say may because every company is a little bit different how they want to handle their renewals. But the law does allow for kind of an automatic kind of renewal for that. So, but just again, you do really want to check with your company or agent so you know when you should be filling out that form if they have any other sort of requirement. So we encourage that as well. But in a general sense, you may need to refill it out if you are relying on other health coverage other than your PIP medical coverage.
Thank you very much, Parker. It looks like I accidentally jumped over a question. So this question is, I do not have health insurance. Do I have to buy unlimited PIP coverage? Parker?
Right. So if you are in a situation where you don't have health coverage, you're not necessarily required to buy the unlimited PIP coverage. So, and no one is required to buy the highest amount of PIP medical coverage under your auto policy. It just depends on, you know, what your individual situation is if you do need to rely on that. So people who buy lower PIP medical coverage or who opt out entirely would be relying on health insurance, their own health insurance, to pay for any auto accident injuries. With that in mind, you know, you can make the right choice for you. You know, those choices where you are required to rely on health insurance may not be available to you. That may, you know, influence what choices you have. So, and also to note, in any limited PIP option. So if you didn't have health insurance, you'd be able to choose the unlimited PIP option or any of the other limited PIP medical options. Like those are available to anyone. It's not contingent on whether you have health insurance. It doesn't force you into a certain option. It's still available to anyone. So, but it is important to note that if you choose a limited option, you know, like the 250K or the 500K in PIP medical coverage, you would be responsible for any other medical costs that exceed those amounts. So that's another thing to put into consideration when you're shopping for coverage, especially if you don't currently have health insurance.
Thank you, Parker. Our next question. If I have Medicare, will I have coverage for medical needs if I get into a crash? Parker?
So yes, so we have confirmed with Medicare that if you are in an auto accident, they will pay for any sort of injuries you sustain in an auto accident. So that's if you have Medicare Parts A and B or Medicare Part C, a Medicare Advantage plan, those plans will pay for your injuries. There has been confusion on it since in the past, usually Medicare wouldn't pay in Michigan because it was because everyone had the unlimited PIP medical coverage for auto accident injuries. So, but I mean, if you maintain that coverage, your PIP will still pay unlimited. It will be covered there. But if you choose a limited option, or if you choose to rely on your Medicare entirely with the PIP opt-out, your Medicare coverage will kick in and it will pay for those injuries. But it's important to note that just because you have Medicare, if it's not the option for you, if you don't want to opt out and rely on your Medicare, if you still want to have that PIP coverage, you are still free to do that. Whatever makes sense for you and any coverage needs you have in your own budget, it's still entirely up to you to choose what coverage makes sense for you.
Thank you, Parker. Next question is, can you talk more about qualified health coverage? How do I know if I have qualifying health coverage, and how can I get a QHC letter? Parker?
Right. So generally speaking, qualified health coverage is coverage that ensures that you have, is coverage that covers for auto accident injuries. So when we use that term, we're either talking about, a Medicare plan, Parts A and B, or another health insurance policy that doesn't limit or exclude any auto accident injuries and has a deductible of less than $6,000. So for any documentation needs, your health insurer should provide you with a document that tells you if your policy is qualified health coverage or not. So you may have to contact your employer's benefit office or your insurance company directly to get this documentation before you make a certification of auto coverage to show proof of qualified health coverage documentation. And again, this also applies for Medicare. You don't necessarily need to get a special document to show that you have Medicare coverage. A Medicare card should be able to suffice just as well if you're looking to use that to opt out of PIP coverage as well.
Thank you very much, Parker. Next question, how does the law change impact motorcyclists? If they get into a crash with a car, will they be covered? Parker?
Right, so the new law didn't specifically change anything specifically for motorcyclists. They're still entitled to PIP if they get into an accident. So if they get into an accident with a motor vehicle specifically. So if you're a motorcyclist and you do happen to get into an accident with a motor vehicle, you would first seek PIP coverage from the owner of that motor vehicle or the driver of that motor vehicle. And then if there's no coverage available there for whatever reason, the motorcyclist could still seek coverage from, their own auto policy or any sort of coverage that exists from the owner of that motorcycle if it was someone else. So there's still PIP coverage available for them to recoup from, but for whatever reason, if there's no PIP coverage there, they're still eligible for those PIP medical benefits under the Michigan Assigned Claims Plan, and that will cover any motorcyclist who happens to be there up to $250,000 of PIP medical benefits. So they're still entitled to that coverage, even if for whatever reason there's no PIP coverage available from any sort of policy, auto policy involved in that accident. So they're still entitled to PIP as they were before the new law. And for whatever reason, even with PIP medical coverage, you can still rely on any health insurance that covers in excess of any of the PIP medical limits resulting from that accident. So there's still coverage there. And also, depending on the accident, you may be able to sue for damages or depending on the situation.
Thank you very much, Parker. We've got time for just a couple more questions. Our next one is, why do I have to sign these forms every renewal? Should they be pre-filled by my insurance company? Kind of similar to one we touched on earlier, Parker. I'm going to pass the floor to you.
Right, so I did allude to this earlier, but I can be a little bit more specific about it. So the PIP form specifically, you will have to, you'll have to sign depending on what coverage choice you've made. So different coverage choices require different have different signing requirements or renewal requirements. So if you choose the unlimited option, the 500K, 250, those limited options, the law does allow for you know, a renewal process where you don't necessarily have to fill out the forms each time, but again, it's very dependent on how your individual company may want to administer those, or have you sign it every single time as like an extra confirmation for them. So it will vary from company to company, but in general, I know a lot of companies, will allow, if you choose those three options, either the unlimited, the 250, or the 500, to just make it so you don't necessarily have to sign the forms every single time if you're keeping that coverage. But if you're choosing an option that requires, any sort of other qualified health coverage or Medicare or the Medicaid option, you will be required to refill those forms out at every renewal. And this is just because it's to confirm that you still have those health coverages. So you're still eligible for those options. And of course, if you want to change which option you have, you do have to refill out the PIP form and say, oh, I want to change my coverage. So in terms of being, if the forms are pre-filled or not, that may depend on your individual insurance company. So again, just to really reiterate, this is a question best directed at your own insurance company, because they may have their own requirements on how they want to fill it out. So.
Thank you very much, Parker. Our last question: how do I know how much PIP to choose? My medical insurance company tells me they would cover anything related to an auto accident. So why do I need PIP on my auto insurance policy at all? Parker?
Right. So in terms of questions about individual coverage, I can't tell you exactly what to buy, because it's very much going to be dependent on your own individual needs, what your budget looks like, what you want to be insured for. So, it's important to review your coverage, review your budget, talk about it with your agent, talk about it with your family, really look at what your coverage needs are and what makes sense with your budget. But that being said, if you are in the process of doing that, and your medical health insurance says that they will cover for auto accident injuries, why need PIP at all? So I think, especially with this, because we do get this question a lot sometimes, is that what your health insurance covers is not necessarily the same as what PIP covers. So they both, a lot of health insurance plans, they will cover your injuries, and so does PIP. But PIP, under your auto policy, it pays for a lot more than just, it pays a lot more benefits related to that care, more than what the usual health insurance policy will. So yes, a health insurance policy, they may cover basic injuries, but a PIP policy will kind of go a step further, and they may cover additional things like transportation to and from medical appointments, vehicle modifications, case management services. I know another big one is long-term care. So like a regular health plan may not cover long-term care services. So if you're very injured in an accident and you need long-term care or custodial care, not all health plans just cover long-term care, but a PIP policy under your auto policy will. So I would say kind of look at what PIP covers versus what your regular health plan covers. More often than not, I'd say a PIP policy is more comprehensive, but that it depends on what your coverage is. So that's what I would say to that, is just to really consider that you do get a lot of extra benefits out of PIP coverage, whether that's the unlimited option or up to the limited options. So that's one thing to consider when you're making your PIP choice.
Thank you very much, Parker. That's helpful. And that is our last question for today. At this point, I'm going to pass the microphone back to Zach Dillinger to close us out. Zach?
All right. There we go. Thank you all for attending today. We did receive a significant number of questions for the live broadcast, and we have simply run out of time. If we didn't answer your question directly, we do apologize, but you can email your written question to the address which is going to pop to the screen, autoinsurance@michigan.gov, or you can always give us a call at 833-ASK-DIFS. And please do check back to the FAQs, which are posted on our website. That web address, one final time, is michigan.gov/autoinsurance. Now, you can also connect with us on social media as well. We do have LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and a YouTube channel. Now, thanks to our moderator, Ian Oberg, and especially to Parker Fisher for answering all of your questions today. Now, thanks again for attending, and please do have a safe rest of the afternoon.